This mini lecture about the Crow, one of the things that hopefully you notice when you read it, one of the things that you can write about, is the idea of duality. And this is why I've paired the Crow and Fun Home together as far as choosing one of the two to write an essay on. So basically the idea of duality, a lot of the characters, or the main characters in this, have two sides. You have Eric Draven, and then after he's shot in the head, he becomes the Crow. You have Shelly when she was alive, and then you have Shelly the corpse bride, who's often seen, instead of being blonde, with black hair after her death, and like a skeleton in a wedding dress, or black hair and black mourning type outfit. She's also represented by Sherry, the little girl who Eric Draven saves or tries to save from an abusive household. And Eric himself can also be compared to Fun Boy. He's kind of like the opposite of Eric Draven. The main characters here seem to have two sides. I mean, Eric Draven himself, like I said, has who he is before he's shot in the head and who he is afterwards. After he's shot in the head, he even has two different colored eyes. One that's dead, where the bullet exited his eye, and kind of this flap of skin folded over and made this scar. And so you have one eye that's kind of white and one eye that's kind of dark. And you see that in the black and white comic book, itself. Just to give you kind of an example, Eric Draven is shown as holding his arms out like Christ on the cross, and then in the rape murder scene, where the gangsters are raping and murdering Shelly, we see Fun Boy holding his arms out like Christ on the cross as well. So you have this idea of duality, of the two sides, who they were before the tragedy and who they were afterwards. And we get to see, for instance, Eric, who he is, before the tragedy and this dream sequence, and then all the memory sequences, and then who he is afterwards. And this kind of idea of light and dark. The Eric before all this violence was a really good guy. He helped out his neighbors. He repaired their cars and stuff like that. Didn't ask for any payment. Was a good husband, a good man. We don't really know what he did for a living. We kind of assume maybe he was a mechanic. We just don't know. But we have that idea of, this idea of duality. You have the Crow is a killer sometimes, and sometimes he forgives people and lets them go. It's interesting. It's very, very interesting. Right now, though, I want to focus on the comparison between Eric Draven and Fun Boy. And this section really begins, he lets him live once, and then we get to see him again after Eric Draven has saved the little girl and left the note for Officer Albrecht. We get to see, another interaction with Fun Boy. And let me see if I can kind of, all right, so here it is. It's, like I said, it's towards the end in the section called, I think it's in book 4 to spare, going to book 5. And basically the page looks like this. And what's interesting about Fun Boy is he is the only one who understands Eric Draven. The rest of them try to buy him off. They try to buy him with drugs, with money, with power. And he's like, no, I'm not interested in any of that. And oftentimes they don't even listen to what the Crow, Eric Draven, has to say. Fun Boy does, though. So this is important. Fun Boy says, listen, I can't say why I done the shit I done. I wish I could say I was. Sorry, but I ain't. I'm a monster burning from the inside. Obedience is submission veiled with gravity. I never let nothing define or limit me. Right? And then he says, Fun boy, I cannot give you absolution. In a few moments, your sins will be between God and you. Have you read Milton, John Milton, talking about Paradise Lost? And Fun boy says, yes. And he says, Lethe, talking about the river Lethe. And Fun boy says, yes, I understand. And Lethe is the river that you go across in ancient mythology, Greek mythology, where when you go through the river Lethe, you forget everything about your former life, who you were. It's like a river of forgetfulness. And he and Fun Boy also are the only two people who really do, heroin a lot together. Sherry's mom does heroin as well, but these two characters do heroin together. And he, for some reason, he allows Fun Boy to kill himself with the heroin instead of, shooting him like the rest of them do. And I believe it's because it's because of this interaction here. And he says to Fun Boy, your crime was the most important because it was in cold blood. It was the act of a soul which, having destroyed everything within itself, has accumulated immense strength. It knows its own dark secret, and this can be completely identified with the acts of total destruction soon to come. You were dead from day one. We do not recognize our souls until they are in pain. And then Fun Boy says, spoken like a true angel of death. And Eric says, as he carves a crown of thorns into his chest, the divine is no less paradoxical than the vicious. What are you doing? And he says, I'm wearing the crown of thorns T-Bird placed upon my head. And there's some interesting stuff in there. The divine is no less paradoxical than the vicious, meaning a paradox is something that happens that doesn't quite make sense. It can't seem to function in reality, but it does. It's like a riddle that can't be answered. And what he means by the divine is in other words, God is, no less paradoxical than the vicious, meaning that it just, it doesn't seem to make sense. The violence, the tragedy, how innocents seem to suffer, and evil people seem to get away with it. It just doesn't make any kind of rhyme or reason. It doesn't fit within the rules. But the whole interaction with Fun Boy is kind of interesting. He is special. He is special because he didn't kill and rape Shelly out of the want to rape somebody or whatever. Everything that he did is because his soul is empty. It's already dead inside. He has this gaping hole inside him that he tries to fill, and he numbs himself to that, with morphine. And he can be compared to Eric Draven because Eric Draven numbs himself also, to his pain. Through cutting himself, through morphine, through killing these other people. Although Eric Draven's soul is not empty. Eric Draven's soul is in pain. So they're kind of almost inversions of each other. They can be kind of compared and contrasted, but they're very much linked.